Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
I finished these fights.
Give me a hell yeah!
Top Rope Nation.
Learn to love it. It's the best thing going today.
Yes, Top Rope Nation. For better or worse, we're here to talk about it. The
Worse.
2022
Worse.
Royal Rumble. St. Louis, Missouri, the Dome, whatever it's called now, the Dome at City Center, something like that, in the books. We've had a night to sleep about it and think about it, and we're ready to break it down and to give it a grade, to take your comments if you're joining us live. Let us know your grade, A through F, on the 2022 WWE Royal Rumble Premium live event. Justin Joint, how you doing this morning?
I'm here, buddy. I'm here.
It's going to be an interesting one. We had quite the active chat going last night in the Facebook group. So thanks to everyone who joined in there. If you're not already in our Facebook group, join.
Most entertaining part of the night.
Yeah. We got the link here in the broadcast description for you. God, it was like 600 comments in the group. I could hardly keep up. That's a good problem to have. So great group of people. We had a contest going with the Rumble over on the Patreon page as well for a free t-shirt. So that was a lot of fun. The show itself, maybe not so much. Not so much at all. Kyle Ross will not be here with us this morning. He's unavailable. It's his wife's birthday weekend, so hope he's having a good time with that. But Kyle did give us his thoughts. I will read some of them on the air as we go. And then myself and Kyle will be back later this week with another flagship Top Rope Nation. It'll be kind of a news-centric show. We're looking at recording that one on Thursday afternoon. So mark your calendars there. I see the grades are already coming in here in the chat, and we'll get to those here in a second. So if you're watching, let us know your grade. I will put those on the air here momentarily. But Justin Joint, let me throw it to you. A through F, your grade for this event.
The poop emoji. That's my grade for it. I'm just giving it the poop emoji.
Hard to argue with you there. You almost... You know what? That's so funny because we didn't talk about this, but I've got something in my head that I've been thinking about all morning to describe my reaction to the show, and you almost stole my thunder with that.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
You're gonna understand here momentarily. My God, look at all these grades come in. We got an F here. We've got another F, throwing them up on the screen. We've got a D minus. Goodness. I mean, yeah, not the most well-received pay-per-view, premium live event from the WWE. I got to tell you, looking at our Twitter polls, so we put these polls up, after every single one of these WWE big shows, and this was by far the worst reception we have ever had. 197 votes as I look right now, with 48% giving the show a D or an F. It's quite a swing from a couple of years ago, or even last year, the 2020 Royal Rumble, the 2021 Royal Rumble. I pulled those stats to show you and Kyle this morning. 2020, 46% of our listeners gave that an A, 37% a B. Last year, 41% of the listeners an A, 45% a B. This year, less than 6% giving the show an A, about 15% with a B, 30% with a C, 48% with a D or F. So you're just going to give it the old poop emoji, huh, Justin?
Yep. Like I said, my favorite things of the night were our Facebook discussion thread. Was a ton of fun. And we'll maybe get into the matches. There was a couple matches I kind of liked. And then the Lesnar Lashley promo was the best thing WWE has done in a very long time.
Oh, yeah, I agree. There was definitely a few things to like on the show. It wasn't like the whole pay-per-view was terrible. I would say it is in the running, though, for weakest. I called it a pay-per-view again. Sorry, guys. It is in the running, though, for the worst Rumble event of all time. I think that the men's Rumble, to me, is one of the bottom two of all. And we'll get to that when we talk about the men's Rumble. Women's Rumble, probably the worst in the short history of those as well. But as the event as a whole goes, I'm just going to put it this way, Justin Joint. Gather around for story time with Mr. Drosty, because I have the perfect analogy. Last night in the Drosty household was a long night. We've got a 6-month-old child, and man, she was up almost every single hour. And so as I'm laying there, I get my hopes up that I might get some sleep. Nope, there come the cries. We're walking across the house, getting the baby, wife's feeding the baby a little bit. Just get your hopes up. You might get back to sleep again. Nope, get woken up again. Just like the Royal Rumble, you get your hopes up. Nope, those hopes are tarnished pretty quickly. And then in the end, at 5:45 this morning, yet again, the baby wakes up, and I walk across the house. And as I walk across the house, the bathroom light over there is on. And I walk past the bathroom, and there is my middle child sitting on the toilet while my oldest child is watching her take a dump. And I thought to myself, this is exactly what WWE did last night. It was like 4 hours of watching a company dump on their audience. Got to give it an F. Got to give it an F, man. I mean, D- at the absolute most lenient grading on a curve, just because I did think the 2 men's title matches were entertaining. We'll talk about those. I mean, that helps a little bit. But when you're talking about the Royal Rumble and the show was built around that match, for them to be that terrible, it's hard to give this a good grade.
I mean, it's almost astonishing at how awesome the WWE is at shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, you just mentioned, the men's title matches. I really liked the first half of Reigns Rollins, and then you had the finish, and you have the Sasha Banks booking, and it was a big giant spotlight on the lack of star power and their inability or lack of desire to build new stars. And unlike in previous years when the WWE is failing to deliver, I don't think the fans have the stamina to will something interesting into fruition like they did, with like Daniel Bryan or even Kofi. I'm not sure yet if this was the worst men's Rumble match of all time, but, at least in 2015, I cared about them screwing things up. At least that one was interesting in the way watching a train wreck happen would be interesting. Now, just numb to it. Don't care. This was boring and uninspired. The year is 2022, and it's Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, and a bunch of interchangeable mid-carders. And that's not even touching on the women's division, where, I'm sorry, Ronda Rousey in the ring almost stinks as much as the things she believes outside of it. Baddest woman on the planet. I agree with that. She's real bad. And frankly, the WWE setting fire to the WrestleMania sign a second time after the men's Rumble match is a perfect metaphor for this promotion.
Dude, so bad. God. The comments are flooding in our chat. Thanks to everyone that's joining us live right now. Lots of Fs, lots of D-. Even my mother checking in. The matriarch of Top Rope Nation. Thanks to Mrs. Drosty for checking in. Life with 3 daughters. That's right. Yeah. So, guys, we're going to break it all down. We'll talk about some of the positives. We're going to dwell on some of the negatives. I think it's hard not to. Before we do, let me just say, if you are watching on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to the channel. Help us out. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitch, or Twitter, head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. It would help us out a lot. If you're listening to the show after the fact on our podcast feeds, available everywhere: Apple, Spotify, Podbean, TopRopeNation.com, wherever podcasts are found. Subscribe, 5-star ratings. If you leave us a 5-star on Apple Podcasts, we, of course, will read it on the air, and I'll send you a free sticker for your trouble. All you got to do, leave your Twitter or Instagram username in that review so I can get a hold of you. And then, of course, the absolute best way to support Top Rope Nation is by becoming a Patreon supporter. We have all kinds of bonus content dropping on Patreon each and every week. We just dropped Top Rope Nation Classics the other day, 2.5 hours on the 1992 WWF Royal Rumble, a much better show. I think you would all enjoy that one if you're not already a supporter on Patreon. We got Top Rope Nation Extra dropping every week. Last week, Kyle and good friend of the show, Liam O'Rourke, recorded 90 minutes for Top Rope Nation Extra on the conceptual history of the Royal Rumble match itself and how it has changed over the years since Pat Patterson came up with the concept. So that was really cool to listen to. Those guys did a great job. And as you're seeing right now in the video stream, you got all the names coming across the bottom of all of our amazing supporters on Patreon. Thank everybody for your support over there, including 3 new patrons who joined in the last week. So I want to shout them out. Shout out to Dante, to Jeff, and Lou. Appreciate you guys joining up. Hope you're enjoying the bonus content over there. And as always, it means a lot to us that you're pledging your hard-earned money to the bonus stuff we're doing at Top Rope Nation, making the growth of this show possible each and every month. So thank you all very much. Justin, there wasn't anything on the pre-show, so nothing to talk about there. No matches on the pre-show, just the round table. So if you wanted to watch Peter Rosenberg talk about WWE, that's your jam. There you go.
Woof.
And then you get to the show itself. Now, I got to say, they had a massive crowd there. So shout out for that.
The dome looked great. The lighting and the production outside of setting things on fire, it all looked really terrific.
Yeah. It's 40,000 people, strong crowd. So you have to give them credit for that. I mean, the show itself, it doesn't even matter what's advertised. They sell the show out practically in advance with nothing announced because it's all based on the Rumble match. And when the Rumble match, though, doesn't deliver, that's why I got to bring down the grade so much, as we'll get to at the end. But, I mean, you got to shout out. I'm sure they had a great live gate. Now, if I had traveled down there, Justin, when this was first announced, we talked about it a little bit because we're only about a 5.5 hour drive from St. Louis. We drove the 4 hours to Chicago for All Out. We drove the 3 hours up to Minneapolis for Full Gear. But I got to say, I never considered going to the Royal Rumble. And if you would have even told me a few years ago that I wouldn't consider going to a Royal Rumble that was within driving distance, I would have called you crazy. But it would have been a long freaking drive home today if I went to that show. I mean, do you regret not going, Justin?
God, no. I regret just watching it in the comfort of my own home last night. Let alone driving 5 hours and spending all the money on food and hotels and the show. God.
I mean, there was a lot of people I follow on Twitter that were there, and I hope they had a good time. With the friends, that would have been fun to see a bunch of people there. But the show itself, I mean, that's why you go. Disappointing. Now, when they started this thing off with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins in match number 1, you got to think about, okay, maybe we're in for a good night because this match, like, it kind of delivered, and the build for this match hasn't been too bad. Bringing in the fact that Seth broke up the Shield all those years ago, that Roman's not been able to beat Seth. So they had a decent story going with the match, and the match itself was pretty good. I wouldn't call this like a classic or anything. I thought it was fine. But here's the problem for me. We've gotten basically post WrestleMania 25. You can always guarantee that these big WWE matches are going to include kicking out of multiple finishers. It's just built in. It always happens. So I don't even really pop for that anymore. Yes, Seth had the near fall with the curb stomp. The audience actually bought that. I didn't buy that at all. I didn't think he was beating Roman Reigns that early in the match, but the crowd was into it, so credit to him for that. You had Seth kicking out of the Superman punch. You had the spear and everything. But that doesn't do it for me. To me, it was a bunch of big spots. The crowd, there was the power bomb on the outside through the table, but just a dreadful finish. So I can't. They had a decent match, but I can't give it any higher than 3.25. I mean, that's about as high as I'm going on the show. And I didn't think anything on the show was above 4 stars. Certainly not even close. The best match on this show I thought was 3.5 stars. Should get to later. Just slightly better than this one. 3.25 stars for the opening match. What did you think about it, Justin?
I liked the first half of it because that seemed at least a little unique. You kind of touched on it with Seth doing all the Shield stuff with the power bomb, and Seth really getting into some of his maneuvers that he hasn't used for a while. He attempted a Phoenix splash. There was the buckle bomb and the stomp, which led to the kick out that you referenced. Then after that, it just kind of turned into your typical Roman Reigns match of the past 2 years or year and a half. The whole story in general kind of confused me just because they're both heels, and you have this super heel, obnoxious Seth coming out to something everybody loves with the Shield entrance, and that moment when he's trying to do the Shield fist bump while saying, "I always loved you." And I just found all that to be kind of weird. Like, I don't know what the rooting interest is. And then, you go into the guillotine choke with the disqualification. I don't know. Yeah, it just all kind of confused me and just didn't. It took me out of the match a little bit, frankly.
So you're saying cackling Seth just doesn't do it for you still?
Shocking, I know.
Yeah, like it was kind of cool to hear the whole Shield entrance again with the whole Sierra Hotel, India Echo stuff. But when he's coming down, kind of dancing with the big smile, kind of took away from it a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. And yeah, like the way he would laugh at Roman in the match that he couldn't beat him, it's part of the story. Yeah, it wasn't really doing it for me. I guess though it built up to the finish nice in that Roman lost it. Like, here's this guy laughing at me. I can't pin him. I'm putting him in the guillotine and I'm not letting go. But then the finish happens. So Seth is right by the ropes and he's getting choked out. And so then the referee lifts Seth's hand and he just drops it on the rope. Like, what the hell?
It
the best
did
we
look.
could come up with.
Yeah, it did almost look like the ref intentionally did that, which was also a little confusing
Totally.
for a second.
Totally. So then, yeah, so Roman won't break because, first of all, he's probably thinking, what the hell is this ref doing? I'm not breaking the hold. Second of all, he wants to teach Seth a lesson, so he just cinches in the guillotine, and the ref counts to 5, and it's a DQ finish. To me, look, they didn't want to beat either guy, but that is not how you start off arguably your second biggest show of the year with that kind of a finish.
And and speaking of not wanting either guy to lose, they're still in the same predicament because you got to think this is going to be going to Crown Jewel, a rematch. So they still are going to have to deal with this problem of not wanting either guy to lose.
Yeah, as Carl threw out in the chat, smacked of wanting a rematch. That does seem to be the case, yeah, because, he still hasn't beat Seth, so we're definitely, I think, going to get a rematch moving forward. So the crowd did not like the finish, right? There was a lot of booing, also because of the chair shots.
Yeah.
Roman really healed it up with all the chair shots. I think you're getting a mix of people not liking the finish and also, of course, the heel work afterwards, but loud boos. You heard the boos,
Well,
as Vince McMahon would say.
Two things there. Once again, going back to just being confused as to the heel babyface dynamic. Are we supposed to sympathize with literally the most obnoxious person in the entire promotion?
Exactly. He was a heel, a strong heel. Well,
And then-
strong is debatable, but like one of the most pushed heels until recently.
And in just WWE in general, I have zero trust in what I'm hearing as far as crowd noise goes. Because it sure sounds like it's loud sometimes, but then you look out into the crowd and it doesn't look like anybody's really into it. So I don't know. I have a hard time buying into any loud boos or loud cheers.
Yeah. Dude, it's always so hard to gauge on these stadium shows because of the people are so far away. But I thought that too. It sounded like a lot of piped in noise throughout the night, especially in the Rumble match. Both Rumble matches, but especially the men's match. I mean, they were sitting on their hands for a lot of that one. We will get to that at the end. But yeah, this is, again, it was a fun match. Wasn't a great match. It's nothing I would ever rewatch. Frankly, it's not a match anybody's going to remember in a few months. So, moving on. We get to the women's Rumble.
Do we have to move on? Can we just stop here?
That's it. Thank you for tuning in to Top Rope Nation. We'll see you guys next week. Yeah, this is not good. It was predictable because word got out that Ronda was going to be coming back. And, in both cases, the Rumbles were predictable. Now, we've talked about before, pro wrestling being predictable is not always a bad thing, but it's in the execution, as we will talk about. To me, the biggest problem with both of the Rumble matches is you have this developmental brand and you don't use it at all in the Royal Rumble. Like later in the show, they had an NXT 2.0 commercial. And I put out on Twitter, it would be a lot better than running a commercial, putting some of those people in the Rumble matches. I mean, what are we doing here? They're bringing out all of these names from the past from, as much as you want to talk about the women's revolution and all that, they're bringing out all these names of people who couldn't work in their prime. I mean, this is the model era of women's wrestling in WWE. And they come out many years past their prime, and they certainly can't work now. And it was just sloppiness after sloppiness. We've got Sasha out first. So you're thinking, okay, starting off good here, right? Sasha Banks, maybe she'll go like bell to bell. Out comes Melina from way back in the day. Crowd was happy to see her. I'll give him that. But then as you go down the order, it's Sasha, it's Melina, it's Tamina, it's Kelly, Aaliyah, Liv Morgan, Queen Zelina. Then Bianca comes out, Dana Brooke, Michelle McCool, who was in this match forever. Saw a funny tweet about how Michelle McCool had more crosses on her ring gear than this guy's grandmother's house. Thought that was pretty funny. Can't remember who that was, but that was a great tweet. Dude, they took Sasha out so early. She barely got any time.
She was the third one eliminated, I'm pretty sure. Third one out. And, talking about star power earlier, it's like, especially with this women's division, there was only like 4 or 5 women who had a real chance of winning this thing. And so you dump one of them, not only dump her early in this Rumble, but you ruin the surprise of her coming back on Friday's SmackDown. Same with Mickie James. How amazing would have that pop and moment been if we didn't know it was coming?
Yeah. Brian in the chat, Sailor Moon gear. Yes, Sasha did have fancy gear for this match, which was cool. Unfortunately, she's only in the match for, I just had the time up, let's see, 9 minutes and 44 seconds.
I mean, that just makes me think she's like still somewhat injured or something, or can't go 100%, because there's no reason to do that otherwise.
Considering Tamina was in there 16 minutes and 41 seconds. Yeah. Michelle McCool, 20 minutes. Bianca, for their credit, was out there 47 minutes, so they gave her some serious burn. That was good. Liv Morgan was out there 37 minutes. Aaliyah, 22 minutes, so a newer face there. But, I mean, as I said, as you go down the list of the talent they had, it's such an indictment of the promotion that they had to rely on this many names from the past, and that they weren't even comfortable bringing up any NXT talent. Like, how do you not have Mandy Rose in this match? Mandy has been getting all the push on NXT 2.0. She's been on the main roster. She's been in the Royal Rumble before. How do you not put her out there? I don't understand that at all. Crowd was happy to see the Bella Twins. I did like Ivory coming out to Right to Censor. Now that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I like that too. Although I will say, like, I do like the Bellas, but it was when Brie came out, there was the moment where, her name popped up and said she was entrance number 19. And all I could think was, Jesus, we're only at 19. We're only 19 women into this thing.
Yeah, I know. Cameron, do we need to see Cameron again? I mean, at that point, that's where I was like, they are really scraping the bottom of the barrel. The names from the past out there. Yeah, Liv Morgan was eliminated by the Bellas. Not sure about that decision. A couple of months ago, remember how pumped people were for Liv Morgan at that title shot on Raw, and they're really going to get behind Liv?
Well, that was actually one of the moments in the match that I found very touching when Sarah Logan came out, and you could very much see how emotional it was for Liv Morgan to see that. Very watery eyes. And then, of course, they're both immediately eliminated by the Bellas. So, so much for that.
I was going to throw this out when I mentioned her. Ivory, 60 years old. Can you believe that?
Insane. She does not look it.
Look great.
She looks younger than I do.
Yeah. Looks younger than me after that night of sleep I didn't get last night. Lita can still go. Lita looked pretty good out there.
She was tremendous.
We're talking about it in the Facebook group. Too bad we're not getting that Lita Britt Baker match that was talked about for AEW. Although it still could happen. Reports were out there that the AEW Lita negotiations were amicable and they left it open for something down the line. So we'll see. But yeah, Mickie James coming in at number 20. She got, up to that point, the biggest pop of the night in the Rumble. I mean, like, no question about it. She comes out with the Impact Women's title, which is pretty cool that they let her do that. She was in the match for almost 12 minutes, not a ton of time, but, like, again, the crowd was really happy to see her. So I like seeing her in the match.
But, that's the thing. It's like there's two types of surprises coming out. There's a surprise like her, where she gets the big pop, comes in, eliminates one person, and then just kind of, sits in a corner until it's their time to be eliminated. Or else the other way is, the surprise comes in and then gets eliminated before the entrance is even in.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. Chat is really blowing up here right now. Yeah, Brian, kind of echoing what we said about it's a perfect example of WWE reaping what you sow. The recent releases and lack of development really showed on the presentation. 100% agree. Well said. Carl checking in. If they were doing Ronda and Charlotte anyway, why didn't they just have Charlotte as the heel, do a twist on the Shawn 95 finish, and Ronda earns the title match another way? I think ever since Ronda was confirmed to come back, they were doing this. I don't think there was ever... I was listening to Meltzer talk about this earlier today, and there was never any other finish considered. Once Ronda was coming back, she was winning the Rumble. They were doing Ronda Charlotte. This is what Fox demands. I gotta bring up a Kyle Ross quote here right now because we were talking about this yesterday. Word got out, Charlotte and Ronda at WrestleMania, and there's a lot of discourse about how they're not doing Ronda and Becky, the singles match that they should have done 3 years ago. When they inserted Charlotte into that, made it a triple threat. And apparently that was originally talked about, but Fox wanted Ronda on SmackDown. Charlotte's on SmackDown. That's the match they're going for. In a year's time, they're planning on doing Becky and Ronda, but a lot can change in a year. We don't know. Ideally, you capitalize first on Ronda and Becky, right? Like that's the match everyone wants to see. But Kyle said this promotion does not book for fans anymore. They book for the biggest and easiest marks anywhere, corporate America. It's true. Corporate America is who they're booking for. That's where the bread is buttered.
I will say the argument against doing Becky and Ronda right off the bat is that, for one, I don't think you really know what kind of reaction Ronda's going to get, whether it gets a babyface reaction or a heel reaction. And Becky is most certainly going to get cheered in that circumstance, regardless of what Ronda is. And I think they're really invested in this shitty big-time Beck's heel run. So I guess, if you hold off until WrestleMania in LA, you got time to figure out what each of their roles is going to be. And most certainly that needs to be Becky as a babyface.
So sad. My thought was that if they did it, it would force them to switch Becky's character because this big time Beck stuff is not good. And yeah, you're right. She would 100% get cheered against Ronda Rousey. Ronda's a better heel too. I think it'd be a lot more natural for Ronda to be a heel. Becky would be the baby face. We're not getting it. What I will say is I hope that they do a triple threat. I hope they put Sasha Banks into that match and they do Charlotte, Ronda, and Sasha. To me, Sasha's on SmackDown. They're going to need something for her. She's a star now. I mean, she's in The Mandalorian. Get her out there. There was so much last year about how, she put over Bianca. Sasha's never had the big win at WrestleMania. She did what was required last year. Dude, give Sasha Banks the victory. Get her in that match.
Yeah, I
agree.
What
I'd like to see.
It sure sounds like Charlotte was really, really pushing for this match against Ronda, and I think Ronda would probably want the spotlight of a singles match at a WrestleMania, which she hasn't had yet. I just
they should have done 3 years ago.
Yes, exactly. I just don't see that happening. I mean, obviously things can change, but
yeah. No, I'm just saying I would like that, and we'll see what happens. I don't know what they're gonna do with Sasha Banks at that show, but
frankly, they might need to insert Sasha Banks into that match from what I saw of Ronda Rousey's in-ring work at the Royal Rumble, because that was, Jesus, those Shane McMahon punches she was throwing were awful.
It's let's talk about that. So Ronda comes out, she gets a really good pop from the crowd. Now, pretty much everyone was expecting her. I mean, this had gotten out days ago, but she still got this massive pop. We should mention she had a baby 4 months ago, so this is incredibly early for her to come back. So props on that. You could tell on the endurance front, she's not there, and you can't blame her. I mean, she just had a baby, but yeah, the striking looked very bad. And that's been something that has been an issue for her all along. She can do the judo stuff and roll and stuff into submissions. It looks great. She needs work on strikes. The pregnancy is not affecting that. And this is not just for Ronda. There's a lot of people in this promotion that don't throw good work punches. Bring in Jerry Lawler. Bring in Bret
Yeah.
Hart. Have them show the talent how to throw good work punches. Because, yeah, that was pretty brutal. At the end, you get down to Ronda and Charlotte. Ronda takes her out, gets the victory. Pyro explodes, and they light the WrestleMania sign on fire. Unbelievable. He couldn't script this.
Yep.
So Ronda celebrates. The WrestleMania sign's on fire. They evacuate that section below the sign on the floor of the dome, which is why during the Becky Dewdrop match, which followed this, the fans were quite distracted throughout. You saw everyone looking off to the side. Nobody really knew what was going on until you started browsing twitter.com and you see that, oh, there's videos of the WrestleMania sign on fire, and they had to lower it down to the ground. They put out the fire. They raised the sign again. And then evidently at the end of the night, they caught the sign on fire once again.
Perfect metaphor for the WWE.
So what did you think of Becky and Dewdrop? To quote Kyle.
Dewdrop! Sorry, I had to do it for Kyle. I had a little blessing in disguise. My little man was being a bit of a handful towards the end of the Women's Royal Rumble. Thank God they've fixed this on the Peacock. I was able to pause the Women's Rumble while I helped put him to bed. So by the time I got back, I kind of was avoiding Twitter and Facebook at that point so that if there's any good surprises or anything interesting happened, I wanted to see it, quote unquote live. So, I hit play and I watched the end of that match. And so for the entirety of Becky Lynch versus Dewdrop, I was catching back up on what everybody on Twitter was saying and the Facebook discussion thread, which was very hard to keep up with.
It was really popping, man. Yeah. I was just hearing the constant ding of Facebook alerts in the background, trying to keep up with what's going on. I will say, I thought, the perfect summary of this match was I'm watching it with my oldest daughter. I let her stay up a little bit to watch this. She loves Becky Lynch. And she wasn't really saying much during the match. And then all of a sudden, you had Dewdrop, who just couldn't beat Becky, and she was whining. Keep in mind, she's the baby face. And she's on the ground, like, screaming and crying that she couldn't win. And my 6-year-old all of a sudden just blurts out, "Will you stop crying?" And I was like, yes, she's right. I mean, this is the baby face. What are we doing here? The story leading into the match was that Becky couldn't hit the manhandle slam on Dewdrop in the build-up. She finally hits it on her out of the corner, off the second rope to get the pinfall victory. And that was our finish. So no surprise, Becky retains. Crowd just wasn't into it. There's all this distraction going on with the WrestleMania sign. It was an okay match, but nothing to go out of your way.
The thing I kept seeing was like, why is this still going? Why has this gotten so much time? And I'm wondering if maybe it was supposed to be shorter, but because of the WrestleMania sign going up in flames, they had to give them some more time to put that out.
Yeah, 13 minutes, 13 even. Yeah, I would be surprised. Stay out there. We need some more time to get the sign situation handled. All right. The next one, to me, was the best match of the show. It was the WWE title match. Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley. Now, this is a match you've never seen before, and they got to it kind of by accident because of, Roman having the COVID situation before day one and everything, and then we got Brock Lesnar winning the WWE title. So we get a less than 1 month title reign here out of Brock Lesnar to move the title to Bobby Lashley. As we saw, Bobby Lashley wins the title here. To me, the story right off was that video package was so good. I mean, like, they went through all their history. They showed the clips of, amateur wrestling. This took me back to like SummerSlam 2002.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. It was a better version of that.
Yep, Rock and Brock at SummerSlam 02. It's just a great. We always compliment them on this. The people that work in the video production department of WWE are just top notch for a show that oftentimes is so disappointing. It's hard to believe it's the same company. These people really deliver. I mean, that was a highlight right there. I was jacked for the match after watching that, and that is that's what you want. And they had a solid match, man. Like it was more unique, obviously, because we've never seen it before than Roman Seth. I thought it was just, two big dudes hitting each other hard. Sometimes this is what you want out of pro wrestling. What did you think? Because to me, this was the match of the show. I'm not saying it's like a 4-star plus match. I'd give it still about 3.5, but it was a fun match.
Yeah, I liked it. It's a bummer that they're so dead set on doing this Lesnar, Lesnar Reigns at WrestleMania, because I think this should have been a WrestleMania feud and a WrestleMania match, because I would have loved to have seen this without the interference at the end, which makes sense for where they're going. I'm not giving it crap for that, but for it to have really been worthy of that promo at the beginning, I would have liked to seen something clean at the end. But no, this was good. I actually kind of liked how all the German suplexes Lesnar was giving Bobby to start off with. Bobby was taking it pretty normally on his back, but then eventually he was like definitely trying to squirm his way out of it when he's flying backwards, kind of more landing on his side, which makes sense for somebody trying to get out of that damn thing or trying to stem the tide. I enjoyed it. I am really sick of that, or the barricade spot, which they seem to do in almost every Lesnar or big man match, where somebody has to go through the barricade at that exact same spot.
Yeah.
They never do it anywhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it was good. I enjoyed it. It's certainly my match of the night.
Dude, it's such a thing where it breaks in the exact same spot that, like, even in the video games, that's where you go to do it. It's so ingrained. Like, it's got to happen right there. So I think they pretty much did the finish that was planned for day one, although I believe at day one what was going to happen was that Heyman was going to go, like, Lesnar was going to win the title at day one, I believe, and then probably go on to drop it back to Roman at WrestleMania. And we would have the situation where maybe Heyman would go with Lesnar and then go back to Roman at Mania. Like, it's not exactly the same, but Heyman was going to factor into the finish. So what we got here, is Heyman's out there with Brock Lesnar, of course, and Roman Reigns comes out. The referee has been taken out by an errant F5 attempt, and Roman motions to Paul Heyman to give him the title belt. And Paul Heyman gives him the title belt, and he takes out Brock Lesnar. Right? So this is how we're going to get to the WrestleMania match, or how we could have got to the WrestleMania match. We didn't need the Rumble victory for Lesnar, as we'll talk about. But yeah, Heyman hands over the belt. Reigns lays out Lesnar. Heyman walks off with Reigns as Lashley goes over, covers Lesnar for the 3 count. We have a new WWE champion. It's Bobby Lashley. We've got Roman and Heyman once again back together.
I like that. That was good stuff. But the fact that almost like 99% certainty Lesnar is going to be the one to dethrone Roman Reigns after this giant title reign just stinks. It just stinks. It's even worse than him ending the streak at WrestleMania 30, because I was pretty upset about it in the moment. It's like, why don't you use that opportunity to put over a younger star? But the thing at the time, we didn't realize how long Lesnar was going to be around. So that has aged a little bit better. Obviously not the match itself, but him ending the streak aged fine. But now we're right back in the same spot. Like, why is he the one to do this? And as Kyle pointed out to us, why he's going to be the one to do it is he's already jobbed out twice. So he's not going to do it a third time.
No way. He's not losing at Mania. Don't see it happening based on how his run's gone so far since he's been back. Yeah. I mean, they're doing it because they got no depth. They don't have any big matches they can do for WrestleMania, unfortunately. So their biggest match that they could do over on SmackDown is a match they've already done twice at WrestleMania. The first time was a pretty good match. The second time we were there was awful.
Yeesh.
Brock won that match, and I assume Brock's going to win this match. So repeat city. And this is why I got into the thing with adding Sasha into the women's match for SmackDown, because we're getting these matches at Mania that we've already seen before on a big stage. Like, we saw Ronda and Charlotte Survivor Series a couple of years back. Sasha would change it up a little bit. We're getting Brock and Roman Reigns, a match we've seen twice at WrestleMania before. This is why I didn't even consider going to WrestleMania this year. When it was first announced, I'm like, it's in Dallas. I've got a lot of family in Dallas. I'd have somewhere to stay. Maybe I'll make the trip. Dude, I'm not spending hundreds of dollars to go across the country for this. I'm sorry. I've already seen, literally, we were there in the Superdome. I've seen this match before, and no, it does nothing for me. So
yeah, I mean, like I said, I would have preferred it to be Lesnar Lashley at WrestleMania, and if they would have done it correctly, Big E Roman Reigns. That was a play, but they crept the bed there.
100%. You're exactly right. And we saw it here because they had a fun match, Brock and Lashley. The hype would have been great. This could have been a WrestleMania match. Unfortunately, it is not. So at this point, it became very clear that Brock Lesnar was most likely going to win the Royal Rumble, right?
Yep.
We're like, Brock Lesnar is going to win the Royal Rumble to set up the match with Roman, but I'm thinking in the back of my head, they don't have to do it. The story's already there.
Correct.
He could just come out on SmackDown, demand the match because Paul turned on him. There we go. I mean, like, you don't put the spotlight on somebody else for the Raw side, because I don't, who knows where they're going on the Raw side. I got a couple of guesses, but they could have put the shine on somebody else. Instead, we get the most predictable ending to the Royal Rumble, as we'll get to in a minute. But first, we got to talk about the mixed tag, Justin Joint. Miz and Maurice.
Do we? Maurice was
Miz
the
and
highlight.
Maurice.
She was the best part of that match.
Yes, true. Now, hey man, here's a name from the past who actually could work a little bit. Who was expecting that Hurricane Rana spot?
Yeah, that was terrific.
Honestly, like, she was far and away when it comes from that era of wrestling, and I'm not throwing in Mickie James. I know she wrestled in that era too, but she was always a worker. But when it comes to like the models they were converting to wrestlers, I mean, no doubt Maurice shined on this show, and most of the other names that we saw in the Rumble were dreadful, right? Yeah, we had the It couple, Miz and Maurice, against the Grit couple.
Ugh, yikes.
Edge and Beth Phoenix. Beth Phoenix was out there paying homage to Luna Vachon. I saw her. She put that on Instagram. The way she had her hair, she had like some paint on her face and almost looked like the vein tattoos that Luna Vachon used to have on the side of her head. That was kind of cool. So, yeah, it was. I thought the match got way too much time. I thought the last couple minutes got pretty hot and the crowd was with them. And, that being said, it was only 12 and a half minutes, but it felt a lot longer.
Yep. Yeah, this probably needed to be on earlier in the night, or maybe it could have kept this time and you put on Dewdrop and Becky at this time to carve out some time from their match. But yeah, I got bored pretty quickly with this match and just kind of buried my nose in my phone. But yeah,
and your scotch as well.
Oh yeah, I was definitely into the scotch at that point of the night. The finish was fine. It's kind of exactly what it needed to be, but that certainly doesn't make it interesting.
Yeah. We got the double spear from Edge and Beth, and then the double Glamazon slam for the finish. I figured going in, Edge and Beth Phoenix were going to get the victory. They did. As I said, the last couple of minutes, probably starting with the Maurice Hurricane Rana out of the corner, which the crowd popped for. They were not expecting that. At that moment on, like, that's the if you're going to watch it from there on is where you would watch. Like, that is where it got pretty decent. But overall, I mean, pretty average match. So nothing must see or anything. The men's Rumble, certainly not must see, Justin Joint.
Oh, jeez. Yikes.
Boy. I threw out on Twitter it's the worst men's Rumble of all time. To get Kyle's thoughts, he believes it's the second worst Rumble of all time. He still picks 2015 as being the worst. I think you're with me on the worst Rumble of all time. I mean, it's neck and neck. It's right in that conversation. You could go either way. Like
I said, it's because of what I said at the top, where at least there was an emotional attachment to 2015. It was an absolute freaking train wreck, but at least that made it memorable in a kind of a bad way. I mean, this was just boring and bland, and I have already forgotten the majority of it. And we're not even 24
good
hours
reason.
removed. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing about Royal Rumbles to me is oftentimes they're rewatchable. Like, I go back and revisit. I've just been putting them on in the background, like, all the time lately to get ready and try to get myself excited for this year's Royal Rumble match. And you look at 2015, which is a terrible one, as Kyle said. Poorly laid out, taking Daniel Bryan out of the match early. The crowd revolted, lots of chants. They hated Roman winning. The famous shot of Roman and Rock at the end, where Rock is wondering what's going on as he's getting booed out of the building in Philadelphia. But that, to me, like you said, that's the difference, is that the crowd was invested. And look, the first 20 minutes, it wasn't that way. Like, Bryan was entrant number 10 in that match. He was only in there 10 minutes. So he was in there, though, like over 20 minutes of the match was before the revolt. And we also had, like, decent returns. Like, Bubba Ray Dudley that night, he was number 3, got a huge pop because they're in Philadelphia, home of ECW. There was just, to me, even though it was a terribly laid out match, and it is one of the worst of all time, there was just a little bit more to like about it than this one, which was like, I didn't like really anything about it. And it got off to, you thought, a decent start. We were just talking off air about this. You get AJ Styles out there at number 1. You get Nakamura coming out at number 2. Of course, you know the history with them in New Japan Pro Wrestling and WWE. Michael Cole says, these guys have had a great rivalry over the last decade or so. What do you think the odds are, Justin, that Michael Cole has ever seen any of their Japan matches?
Oh, zero chance.
Just curious.
You know, and that's funny, 'cause, like, this is basically where my note taking for the night stopped, was making note of kind of cool seeing Nakamura come out at number 2 to go against AJ Styles. But then it's like that was immediately followed by, well, they've had one good match, and that was in Japan. And if you give it any thought, their feud in WWE was awful. It was all based around them hitting each other in the nuts.
Yep.
And that's was like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess this is what we're going to do.
And it became very clear that, again, just like we talked about with the women, the depth issues in this promotion. This, to me, was the least star-studded Rumble match I have ever seen. I mean, it was bad. So after AJ and Knock are out there, we get these 3 in a row. Austin Theory, who, by the way, has been doing segments with Vince McMahon and is not over whatsoever. Robert Roode, Ridge Holland, talk about a murderer's row there. Then we get Montez Ford. Okay, Montez Ford is a guy who should be getting a big push. This guy has it all. Like, super charismatic, can talk, has a great look, can work. Someone put this out there a few weeks ago on Twitter, and I 100% agreed with them. He said, for everything people are saying about Hook right now, we should be saying the same thing about Montez Ford. And I 100% agree. He has everything. To me, he has everything that Hook has, you know, and he's more experienced. But he's in the tag team. Tag teams flounder in WWE. We get the cool frog splashes. He had one in this match, but that's about it. And he only got 9 minutes in the Rumble.
Ridge Holland had twice as much time as him.
Yes. I mean, Jesus. So then we get Damian Priest. Then we get Sammy. And then Johnny Knoxville comes out.
Oh.
Johnny Knoxville, who hasn't been relevant in American pop culture in over a decade. There's children looking at their parents saying, who the hell is this guy? He comes out there. He gets the biggest pop of anyone so far in the match. Dude, if you're bringing in outsiders and they're getting the biggest pops of the night, that should be a major sign to you that something is wrong in this promotion.
Yep.
I said to you guys last night, I think I put this in the chat. Look, Pam Anderson was at the 95 Rumble. This is like her heyday, the heyday of Baywatch, right? She did not get the biggest pop on the show in 95.
Yeah.
Here's Johnny Knoxville, the biggest pop on the show. What are we doing here? What are we doing? There was one point in the match I had in my notes here. The people in the ring were Ridge Holland, Austin Theory, Bobby Roode. I mean, like, come on, man. Here it is. Sorry. Holland. This is later in the match. Holland, Ricochet, Chad Gable, Dominic, Omos, and Austin Theory, and AJ was still in there. That was all the people in the match, like halfway through. Talk about no star power. Like, luckily AJ was still out there at that point, but they took him out soon thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, in some of those names should be stars. If WWE had done anything in the past 3 or 4 years, I mean, Chad Gable should be a star. Ricochet should be a star, but nope.
Ricochet apparently is completely happy just being a geek. They're
Yep.
not doing anything with them. He wants to stick around. Whatever, man. Get paid if that's what you want to do. But he's never going to be a star in WWE. They clearly don't see him as anything other than what he already is. Chad Gable, the ship sailed a long time ago. I mean, here's a guy with an interesting backstory with this amateur wrestling background. Who would have ever guessed that Shorty G not get over, Justin? Who could have ever guessed?
Didn't see that coming.
Dominic Mysterio, how do you not have him share the ring at all with his father, who is also in the match? And I wouldn't have had him come out back to back because that'd be too hokey.
Yeah.
Kind of like Sami Zayn coming out and having Johnny Knoxville come out right after him. That's a little hokey. That would have been hokey to do that with the Mysterios too. But I don't know how you don't have them share the ring together at all. I mean, it was just, again, like you go down the list and the order they came out: Gable, Dominic, Happy Corbin, Dolph Ziggler, Sheamus, Rick Boogs, Madcap Moss.
Oh, no.
Like, this is just horrid. And there's no surprises either. Okay, how do you not put Braun Breaker in this match? Like, how does it not happen? I don't get it, Justin. Like, a couple of years ago, we've seen people come. We saw Keith Lee come out, get a massive reaction. They can do it. They've done it with success. I don't know why you push back against that kind of thing, man. I don't get it at all.
In their defense, a tiny little bit. Drew McIntyre was a nice surprise.
So, yeah, McIntyre returns. So that was good. And, when we get down to the end, I did like the brief moment in the final two with McIntyre and Lesnar where they went at it. That was nice.
Yep.
Doesn't save the match at all. But that final two portion, which was very brief, that was good. McIntyre was good. But overall,
we should mention for all the WWE marks out there, because I'm sure they're screaming into their phone right now listening to us. I guess if you want to say Bad Bunny and Shane McMahon were surprises, fine, we'll give you that. They didn't do anything for me.
No. I mean, it just tells you what the promotion thinks, though. I mean, WWE, at least for the last 24-ish years, and, it started off with Austin McMahon. That was good. But then after Austin McMahon, it became the McMahon show for the foreseeable future. And ever since that time, this has been a McMahon reality show masquerading as professional wrestling. And if you need any proof, it's at the fact that they think Shane McMahon is such a big surprise and that Shane McMahon threw out Kevin Owens.
Ugh.
Luckily, Kevin Owens is getting paid very well. But
so
that's what they think of him.
The other big mistake they made in laying out this match was, why is the hometown boy coming out at number 29 and only being in there for 2 minutes?
No,
Randy Orton.
No kidding, man.
Like, that would have at least spiced up the match a little bit. If you have him in there for a while, put him in there towards the beginning or the middle and have a bunch of eliminations. I mean, you could have made a moment where the crowd would be on their feet if he was just RKOing everybody in the ring, but nope, 2 minutes.
Yeah. Kofi Kingston was only in there 21 seconds because he blew the spot to the outside, unfortunately, and he jumped to the outside, tried to catch himself on the ringside barrier, but as they show on the replay, both of his feet hit, so he was out. He was supposed to be in there longer than that.
Apparently they had some big spots planned for him and Big E, which, don't show the replay. Just don't show the replay. Get in that ref's ear. Tell him to tell Kofi just to play it like he landed fine and go from there. But whatever.
Exactly. Bad Bunny, again, a celebrity, got a huge pop. I mean, like, the clip from the Rumble that's going around is Bad Bunny doing that Canadian Destroyer. That should not be like the highlight of the match. I mean, it's cool. He's a celebrity and everything. But, like, that's the one gif I see on Twitter today from this match. Like, that is the one going around. You want your stars to have some gifts going around. I mean,
Yep.
I was holding out. I don't know why I do this to myself, but we've talked about it so much on how they've blown Big E. And it's just like, what are they going to do on the Raw side? They could have had Big E win the Rumble. You know, they could have done that. Nope. We need Brock Lesnar in the most predictable fashion possible to win the Royal Rumble, despite him not needing this victory whatsoever. As I said, they could have put the shine on somebody else from Raw to set up the title match. Even Kevin Owens, man.
Yeah.
No, he got tossed by Shane McMahon.
Well,
though.
and that's the thing is Kyle pointed out, I don't remember if that was in our text thread or on the Facebook thread, was you didn't need Lesnar to win. You already had the built-in story, but they had to do that because they have no idea what that other match is going to be. They don't know who they want to be in the other title match, and that's why they didn't have anybody else win this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well said. They don't know where they're going 2 months from now. They can't commit at this point to anything. So, yeah, as you mentioned, Randy Orton came out at 29, was only in there for 2 minutes. He got a huge pop when he came out, hometown. Huge boos when he got eliminated by Brock, you know, right away. Anyone else that we missed along the way? I mean, as I said, yeah, Drew, Shane, but nothing major in the way of super surprising returns, which took away from the match to me. The star power took away from the match to me. The layout was poor. Pat Patterson weeps, as I said on Twitter. I mean,
AJ Styles getting eliminated by Madcap
yes,
Moss.
dude, that is horrendous. Ooh, I mean, you have him out there 29 minutes. At least have it be multiple people. Madcap Moss eliminating AJ Styles. Nakamura only in there for 5 minutes and 51 seconds.
Some of these people who are talking about how they really enjoyed this show, and it's like they're actually trying to claim there's long-term storytelling. It's like the Rumble matches were good because we got future matches out of it. We got 2, which we saw coming.
There's no long-term storytelling in this show. I don't know what people are talking about when they say that, because how do you grade an event called the Royal Rumble good when the Royal Rumble sucks? Yes, there was 2 pretty decent title matches, but both Rumbles were among the worst of all time. Long-term storytelling, okay, that Brock Lesnar won the Rumble. Yeah, everyone saw it coming. It was predictable as hell. Like, if you want to see, and like Kyle put this in our text thread. Now, the Usos weren't in the Rumble, but if they had planned accordingly, they could have had the Usos in the Rumble, and then they could have had Brock Lesnar like come out backstage and steal their spot or something. Like, that would have been some storytelling, and then in the background, Heyman's pissed, you know, or frightened. They didn't do any of that. There wasn't.
He just magically ends up with number 30.
And of course it's number 30. You know, like, it's not storytelling. You want to see storytelling within a singular show, watch WrestleMania 10. Right? With what they did with Brett and Owen. That's storytelling across the show. This is just, it's predictable in the worst way. It took away from the match. It was so predictable. And what they did. And it was exactly what you thought. Brock comes out, easily tosses guys, had that little interaction with Drew McIntyre, but tossed him pretty quick. And that's the finish. The pyro goes off, and they light the sign on fire again. Royal Rumble's in the books.
That was the other thing we didn't even mention about the Women's Rumble. Just Ronda easily tossing out Charlotte within like 30 seconds of their little stare off. And then that's it.
Yeah. If you've watched many Royal Rumbles like we have, you're probably disappointed in this show. If you are new to wrestling, I don't know, maybe you were entertained. I did see some stuff out there about people watching with groups of individuals who aren't really keen on pro wrestling and they had a good time or whatever. But here's the problem with that. Pro wrestling is a business built on repeat viewing. You got to get people to come back, to spend money, to stay invested. If you have a bunch of people over to watch the Royal Rumble because it's an easy match to understand and they have a good time, that's one thing. But are they doing anything to bring those people back? Did anything happen where they're going to commit 5 hours of weekly viewing to this product? I highly doubt it. Just having a good time one night does not matter. And when you're longtime fans who are spending that money and are committed, and through all evidence to the contrary, are trying to keep watching, hoping they turn this thing around creatively, see it as the worst Rumble or one of the worst Rumbles of all time. As I told you, we got 200 votes in our Twitter poll. A lot of people chime in, and it's a good sample. And overwhelmingly grading it a DF. That's bad, Justin.
Yeah.
That's real bad. Those are the people that know, not the people that are watching it one time casually. That doesn't mean it was a good event, that some casual people thought it was a fun show, because those people aren't going to be back. And that's not what the business runs on.
You know, honestly, that was kind of my big question coming out of this show, was to all of our listeners who are devoted to the WWE, and they are, because, you know, we keep having to cover this stuff because those get our biggest downloads.
Yeah.
You know, it's those WWE fans that want to hear about that show. And I just want to know, it's like, you know, what do you like about this? You know, what's it actually going to take for you to stop watching this crap? Because I'm tired of covering it. We have an alternative. We have an alternative.
That's the thing, is why it's hard to stay mad at a show like this, because we do have an alternative.
Yep.
There was a time when it was, unless you want to watch New Japan, which, you know, there was a little bit of an entry barrier for a while. Now there's not. We got New Japan World, but for a long time, this was it. And TNA was bad. And when WWE was bad, we were screwed. Now there is an alternative, guys. So it's hard for me to get too worked up. I'll review the show and talk about my problems with it, and I hope that they turn it around, because we're going to keep covering it. We do a podcast. We've done a podcast for 6 years. You want to hear us talk about WWE? It is the biggest promotion in the world. We're going to continue to talk about it, but it's sure a lot more fun when the product is good. A lot more fun. Please improve. Please. I'm going to watch, you know, but like, God, it's so frustrating. So yeah, I don't know what the motivation is. It's a company with little moments, but not much in the way of storytelling. That's the problem.
I think it's just, I think it's a younger generation who grew up with this kind of quote unquote short-term storytelling where only moments matter. And they weren't exposed to the wrestling we were exposed to when we were young, when things mattered in the future. You know, like, it was long-term storytelling. We've talked about that ad nauseum. They just don't have that anymore. It doesn't matter.
No. So that was the 2022 Royal Rumble, everybody. Let us know your thoughts. As I said at the top of the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave us a message. You can email us at topropenation@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Droste, Droste. He's at Justin Joynt, Joynt. Kyle and myself will be back later this week with a news-heavy show. Not going to lie, probably going to focus quite a bit on AEW on that show, because we have been the last few weeks pretty much talking all WWE, Royal Rumble themed stuff. Had some good shows drop, though. Check them out if you haven't. We had that great show with Michael Jenkinson last week, looking at the greatest Royal Rumblers of all time. That was our #1 most downloaded show of January. Thank you to Michael, who did a tremendous job on that pod, I thought. I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Rumble 92, Top Rope Nation Classics. I did post a teaser, 15-minute teaser on our main feed. Check that out if you haven't heard it. If you want to hear the whole show, join the Patreon page. Would love to have your support over there. All kinds of bonus content dropping each and every week. And Justin, anything else?
Nope. Just thank you to everybody who's on our Facebook discussion page, because that's what made last night bearable.
Yeah, that link is here in the broadcast description, or you can search Top Rope Nation Pro Wrestling Discussion on Facebook and join the group. And Justin, best of luck to your San Francisco 49ers today, sir.
I'm nervous. I'm real nervous.
It's kind of hard to not root for the Niners in that game. I'm not going to lie. I actually looked at, where do more of our podcast listeners live? And we have more listeners in the Bay Area than the LA area. But I mean, just being our age, growing up, watching the Niners, watching Jerry Rice, having that nostalgia. Joe Montana, of course, watching the Joe Montana doc on Peacock right now, which
Excellent.
if you guys aren't watching, check it out. It's super good. I gotta root for the Niners in this one.
Yeah, buddy.
And on the other side, we got the Bengals and the Chiefs. Got a lot more listeners in Ohio than Kansas or Missouri, guys. So if you're out there, good luck to whichever team you're rooting for. But I know a lot of you listening are rooting probably for the Bengals. We'll see what happens over there. But the Chiefs look pretty strong. I am going to enjoy Championship Sunday in the NFL Just Joint. And let's see. Carl says he's rooting for the Bengals, as is Mr. Liam O'Rourke. Oh, that's right. Liam's probably rooting for them because of the Brian Pillman connection. There you go. There's your wrestling connection. That makes sense. So, yeah, enjoy Championship Sunday. Hope you enjoyed the review. Thanks to everyone who tuned in live. If you want to join us live in the future, subscribe to the YouTube page. You can catch this before it hits the podcast feeds. I'll be putting that out here momentarily for all the podcast listeners. And we will catch you Thursday afternoon. Have a good week, everybody.